Greetings everyone, this is Jarus, Citizen Gamer, and once again, my bastion of common sense, Lightning Dragon, here to bring you another weekly podcast. Say hi, Lightning.
Hi.
So enthusiastic. This week, Lightning brought the topic to hand about medium to large ships and how that's going to incorporate into Star Citizen. Because right now, what we see mostly, unless you're in the persistent universe, if you're heavy into Arena Commander, medium and large ships, particularly large because they're not even in the game yet, they don't really have a place there. And if they did, they wouldn't survive for anything. I mean, even right now, one Connie can pretty much be taken out by a single Hornet. And there's the inherent problem of, as Lightning and I were basically, he had a Connie and I had, I think it was a Hornet. And basically, it was a circle strafe match, and we basically were facing each other for most of the time, and it was pretty. It feels weird that large ships and small ships can rotate and slide like that. It feels like for the most part right now, a lot of ships don't have a lot of difference in them, and that's very weird.
And it very well could be that it's just we have a placeholder flight model that they just toss onto everything until they can get it, where they want it to be. That's kind of the problem. You can't really say, oh, well, turning is out of balance right now if we're not looking at the final flight model. And it's what you and I keep complaining about for the most part, is we need a standardized flight model. Not standardized as in every ship has the same flight model, but fighters fly like this within a certain realm of how far they can turn, how fast they can fly. And then you have like the medium fighters and things, and they fly in these parameters. And then you have the large ships, and you scale it, I guess, down in this case, where with like weapons we scale them up. And that's we're going to be touching on a lot of things here in this one, just because the size of ship and the type of ship you have, really it's how you want to play the game and kind of what you can do with that ship. And unfortunately, with how the game sits right now, it is like 98% fighter focused. And so, you take out even if your ships are broken or not broken, like the Connie's not really broken, but you can do just as much with 3 Hornets as you could do with one person flying a Connie and 2 gunners.
Well, yeah, but actually you could probably do more with 3 Hornets because of the nature of it. The thing is that, we had... this week on the forums has been pretty hot in the Arena Commander area, and one of the things I keep bringing up is that when I talk about the roll and pitch model, it's not because that I want an atmospheric flight model. I want something that's physically accurate to human physiology. And no matter the way you look at it, we discussed this, I think, in the last podcast, was that lateral is not something, or lateral strafing is not something that you want to have as a long-term kind of maneuver.
That's why they have straightaways on those oval courses.
Well, it's kind of weird that they haven't gone into this direction, considering the fact that this monthly report talked about one of the things they mentioned was the fact that they had oxygen systems going into place that would even regulate the amount of oxygen in the character's bloodstream. Okay, so we go to this.
That's pretty in depth.
Yes, we go to that level of detail, but at the same time, we ignore basic physics when it comes to human physiology and maneuvering. So to me, there's a real conflict in there, and while it's important that we not only set the maneuvers to be correct, the pacing has to be correct as well. And I was just responding to something Galoith had mentioned on the forums, and it's called the Galoith. He is a really great pilot, and he's a big fan of kind of the older style, and he's kind of more into the fast-paced combat, and everyone's got their preferences, and that's fine. But I think if you want to incorporate large ships into Star Citizen, things have to be slowed down, or at least brought into some sort of uniform, realistic pattern. And the reason for that is if you make it too fast, turrets become pointless, large ships become victims of everything, and it just turns into a twitch fest. So there has to be that line between, like, I'm not looking for a full sim. Sim light is fine, but there has to be that balance that basically where all the ships can interact with one another, and otherwise you're going to have basically the only thing that a Connie can beat is, say, another Connie or a Retaliator, or those kind of ships can fight each other, but everything else, like, oh, here comes a fighter, run, you know. Uh, it's kind of you have to really walk that fine line, and I think that, and I'm hoping that they haven't these changes. Well, yeah, because we don't have a lot of the large ships yet. I mean, once the Idris comes in, they find out, wow, things are flying too fast. All those turrets on the Idris are pointless. You know, no one can hit anything.
And
except
to quote Chris Roberts himself, he's in multiple personalities here. He said himself that he wants the Connie to be about as strong as 3 Hornets. They even had a demo when they were in the early stages where they were doing the multi-crew ships.
The first one.
Yeah, they had 1 Connie fighting 3 Hornets, and I think he killed. I think he killed 1,
yeah,
and then the other one was badly damaged and decided to kind of bail out, or he couldn't keep up the fight or something.
But what did you notice in that confrontation? This is another thing I mentioned today in the forums. It's the same thing you see in the commercials. It's the same thing that you see in the early pitch video. You don't see things lateral strafing. You don't see things doing the basically just using their thrusters to fly. What you see in that is the main engine being the driving force, and they're doing strafing runs. They're shooting past the ship, hitting hard and moving fast, and then the turrets are trying to track them instead of basically just pivoting and circling around them. That's a whole different kind of combat. So every example they tend to show you, whether it's commercials or it's these demonstrations, if you were to take, let's just say, you take one guy who plays Arena Commander a lot, okay, or anyone at all, frankly, who plays the game, and you put him against a Connie, and you get in the right position, and all you're going to have to do is just keep circle strafing, and there's nothing a person can do about it.
You don't even have to use your thrusters. You can just sit there and point straight at them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's one of those things that... So, is rotation too high? I don't know about that. I think the problem is that I think that rotation... if you look at something like Battlestar Galactica, those ships, those little fighters, had really good rotation, but you don't see them doing lateral strafing or horizontal, vertical strafing. You see, they basically thrust with the main engine, and then they pitch. So it's kind of like the early days of Arena Commander, where when you decoupled, then you were just kind of sliding in that direction. And that changed later on because people wanted what they call a true 6 degrees of freedom flight. You know, they wanted to have all the control. And I'm not against that, but it shouldn't be as powerful as it is, in my opinion. I think that you need to keep certain things within check. And anyone who's seen Battlestar Galactica, I mean, you have to admit, that's some of the best damn looking space battles you've ever seen, hands down. I mean, I'll take those any day over anything I've seen in Star Wars, anything I've seen in Star Trek. Man, they're just epic. And we have, with a system that's going to be following Newtonian physics, you know, fake to some degree, but obviously it's something that's trying to follow those guidelines.
As long as it's close.
Right, a real potential to emulate something along those lines. And to me, it seemed it would be a wasted potential to turn the game into something that just basically, and I'll just go ahead and throw this out there. I've had several people I've been in debates with for a while came right out, and one had mentioned Descent as their ideal flight model, like a complex Descent. And the other one had mentioned, actually linked videos to Virtual On for the Sega Dreamcast for tactics of combat. And I'm like, I would never, ever, ever think of connecting those things. They're like, well, it's like fighting is. No, I wouldn't connect Street Fighter either. This is not the same kind of thing. Yes, tactics can be involved, but the tactics you see in an arcade game or things that move at that pacing, those are different. There's nothing wrong with them. I own Virtual On. I have the controller for the Dreamcast. A couple of them. I bought it when I lived in Japan. I was in Osaka for college. But you know, the thing is that I would never have connected those two things together, and that it's that kind of disconnect that is, I think, is causing a lot of disharmony in the forums. You know, that and controller unification. Control method unification. But you know, the other factor that we're talking about with ships is that there is this, and I think it's a good time to get into a little bit. I mentioned a long time ago the arms race to the bottom, and I've never really got into it, but now I feel it's a good time to kind of get into it a little bit. And what I meant by that is that, as you may have noticed, that as ships get bigger, the guns get bigger, and so what happens is that if that big ship is lucky enough to get a hit, it's gonna wreck your world. It is absolutely gonna hit that fighter, and it's gonna be like pop dust. And that might sound cool, but that only promotes further twitchy gameplay. That fighter needs to stay always out of the range of those guns. I mean, think back to
Yeah, it's only fun until it happens to you.
exactly. Think back to the Freelancer commercial. You have the two cutlasses coming up beside the Freelancer. The guns automate. Oh, automated guns, sensor tracking or something. That would be really cool, wouldn't it? Anyway, so they automate out to the side and they shoot the cutlasses. Like the first one gets destroyed in like a single volley, and the other one breaks off, and the other guy shoots a single missile and takes it out. I mean, obviously that's theatrical, Hollywooded, right? But the point is that to you look at the when the Freelancer first came out, it had size 4 guns on it, and that thing I would just go bang, and whatever fighter was in front of me, it was just dead. It was just dead. There was no damaging it. It was just splat, finished. And right now they said I think they want to increase like the size of the turrets, guns on the turrets on the Retaliator to size 2.
Aren't they not the right size anyway, though?
They're size 1 right now, so that's...
Oh god, that is just trash.
Yeah, but I mean, and size 2 I think is reasonable, but you get to a point that basically, how many guns do we need on these ships? Holy crap! I mean, you've got you got the Hornet's got 6, and you've got the Saber, which has got 4, and it can carry 4 size 3s, which is pretty close to what the Hornet can gear up if you take off the top turret and put like a fixed on there. That's a size 4, so they're within a fairly close, firepower range between one another. But sometimes I get the idea that when a new ship comes out or a bigger ship comes out, that CIG kind of just straps bigger and bigger or more and more guns on it. Like they're going to revamp the Redeemer that won the next great starship, and this is one of the ships I own. And they want to add 2 guns to the front and 2 automated turrets, I think is what they said. So, because there was
for that ship, it's kind of a mixed thing. Like, for example, it has large, blind spots.
Yeah.
After they looked at it, they're like, well, you wouldn't be able to fire here or here, and so it kind of makes sense in some degree that they would add more guns, but they should really be only adding them to cover fields of fire. So maybe size 1s, like the automated size 1, so you're not going to have a lot of punch there because they're just size 1, but
Right.
At least if someone's behind you, they can't have free reign.
But every ship's going to have a blind spot. I mean, otherwise we'll just be flying a ball with guns pointed in every direction. I mean, that's the whole point of this, the idea of maneuvering and flying. You want to, there's a problem of, I mean, think about it. You look at the Redeemer, okay? It's got 2 turrets, top and bottom, and it's got a gimbaled set of double guns in the front. Okay, so that's basically 6 guns, and it's got a good amount of missiles. And then they want to add 2 wing guns on top of that, which basically puts potentially 8 guns forward. And then they want to put 2 automated turrets on the back, and those might be doubles. So if they're doubles, that'd be 4 guns back, 8 guns forward, and that is insane. I mean, there's a certain point where I'd almost wish they would just strip it down and say, okay, this ship just has 2 size 5s in the front. I mean, I know, or 2 size 4s or whatever. It's like I just all the guns. My goodness, guys. I mean, it feels like that scene from The Mask where he feels like, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" And he pulls out like those guns out of his pocket. And it's like chain guns and missile launchers and bazookas and everything, just all like combined pistol on each hand, and everyone runs. That's kind of what it's starting to feel like. And so yeah, I mean, I think they need to be careful. I understand balancing still to come, and I know they took 2 guns off the Hornet. It used to have 8. There was 2 that were right on the chin. And those still might be there for the military versions, the actual military. I keep hearing that might be the case, and that the civilian version loses those 2 guns. And it's possible, but it's still a lot of firepower. But, You need to have combat that's also slow enough so large ships can do things like have people run around and repair things and optimize systems and work all those things. Because if combat's over in 30 seconds or less,
What
all
was the
those
point of having that big ship?
yeah, what was the point of any of those systems? What was the point of that mechanic of the game? You need to have the proper pacing. And fighters have the same systems too. And the pilot's got to run all that. So having played a lot of World War II simulators, and I use this as an example partially because Chris said I want to have World War II in space. Uh, when you play something like that, when I played IL-2 on full sim, and I'm not, once again, I'm saying full sim. I'm not saying I want Star Citizen to be a full sim. I'm just giving you an example. The thing is that I would have to modify my prop pitch, my fuel mixture, my trim on my flaps to counter the torque of the plane. I would know all these based upon the altitude, what I was attempting to do, and I would make adjustments on the fly. But when battle would get they get to a fur ball with like, 3, 4, 5 guys all like in the same area, your time to do that is very limited. And you may forego it entirely because actually that kind of micromanagement might get you killed. So there's this balance between working systems and not being able to work systems. And you have to straddle that line when it comes to combat. And particularly with large ships, you really have to make sure that that's available because if it goes too fast, if combat happens at that pace, it negates everything that's been built. And like you've got repair ships. Repair what? Everything's dust, right? So I mean, what are you going to repair? I'm going to take this wing and turn it into a full Hornet. It's just not how it's going to work. Um, so yeah, I mean, large ships they have to be everything has to be scaled so that they can interact. And some people like to rip on Elite Dangerous for its slow flight model, but you got to understand something. The smallest ships in Elite Dangerous are probably about the size of a Connie. And you might think that they're small, but Elite Dangerous ships are massive. And you put them side by side, and yeah, all of them kind of turn slow, but they're way, way bigger than anything in Star Citizen. Most of them are. So we have to keep that in mind, that we can't really. And I wouldn't want to force that kind of. Elite Dangerous has a very much an atmospheric flight model, and they came out and said as much. They said they wanted to have a throwback to the original Elite Dangerous, but they had a very clear goal, a very clear vision, and a very clear statement of what they were going to do, and they did it. What we have in Star Citizen sometimes feels like a little bit of we don't know yet, and or that wheel is really round. Let's see if we can chisel off some edges and make it better. So, and I'm not trying to rip on them. I know there's a lot of devs out there working hard, but there's no shame in going out there and looking at games like Diaspora and things like that and say, this works really well. This is very similar to what we want. How can we take something like this, put it in the Star Citizen, add our own flair to it, and make it our own? And that's really what it comes down to. I mean, when it comes to the whole of the game, you want to have a certain flight model, make it apply universally. If you're going to do physics, make sure you go all the way with it. Don't go half-assed on it. Don't. I'm going to follow physics here and ignore physics here. That kind of inconsistency is very hard for any developer or anyone to play with. When you developing a game, you have to have unified rules. Everything has to be set across the board. As otherwise, you don't have. No one knows what they're supposed to do. One hand does not know what the other hand is doing. But like Lightning here, he owns the Retaliator, and we're hoping that at some time that they manage to
Fix the broken armor, fix the shields, improve the weapon size, and just make it so it's an actual viable ship. That was one of the very first ships I bought.
yeah.
When I first got the game, I didn't want to go for the basic Aurora package, but I didn't want to go for the Hornet because that's more of a pure fighter. So I kind of went in between those, and I got the 300i, and I had that for a long time, and I upgraded to the 325A, and then eventually it's kind of like, well, I have a bit of extra money, and there was a sale going on, which I didn't get any discounts for.
That was
And I
that was an
upgraded.
accidental sale. That was what caused the LTI controversy of
Well,
pushing.
no. I'm talking about a different sale. When
Oh,
I
okay.
upgraded to uh, what's the pirate ship?
Cutlass?
Yes, when I upgraded to the Cutlass, because it was the Cutlass Blue had come out, so I upgraded to the Cutlass Blue because that was more of a general purpose utility vehicle. And once again,
Yeah,
we're getting into the larger ships because like in War Thunder, fighters are okay. I don't mind flying fighters. I do okay in them, but War Thunder is a bad example because it's all about who has the biggest guns and Russian imbalances and totally different topic to get into, but I tend to kind of go with the bigger planes like the A20 or whatever.
it's true.
Jarvis and I, we went into a mock
B-25
simulator
bum
battle.
rush.
Well, yeah, the B-25 is pretty awesome too, but we went into a simulator battle, and you were flying a Yak or something,
Yeah,
and because it was a simulator battle, I was able to keep my heavy attack aircraft ahead because I had more speed,
it
I
was so
had more
annoying.
power, yeah, and I could slow down, and I had a higher stall speed or a lower stall speed rather because
Right.
it was designed for the attack aircraft, so I could do these amazing maneuvers in this big, heavy, clunky
And
attack
my little
aircraft.
Russian turn fighter, when it's on a sim mode, some people understand that Russian fighters don't have that much power, and when you put it on sim, and you're sitting there, you're in a sustained turn fight, their power starts to just tank, and then so you get the situation like I'm almost got you, crap! I got to accelerate, I'm falling out of the sky. So you end up losing the line, and then I come out and loop around and try to come back around, and then then I come back around.
And
By
I'm and
then
I'm gone because I back to full
it's fun
throttle.
though.
I pull the flaps up so I'm not any more drag, and I just punch it so I can do that
Yeah.
large looping turn. And there's a lot of depth and gameplay in a real, not maybe not a real
Not to mention
sim.
your turrets blasting at me the
Yeah,
whole
the
time.
then
I'm
the,
trying
the
to dodge
turrets the
them at the
whole
same
time.
time.
But I mean, even if you have even a little bit of realism in there, in where flaps lower your speed, and I have a higher top speed or I have better acceleration, there's these little tiny things that you can do, and if you're good with that vehicle, like the A20 that I was flying, I can push that past certain limitations, and I can still fight a fighter. And the benefit of having the turrets, because it was an attack airplane, I can always be shooting back at an enemy, even if I'm in really heavy maneuvers. And the problem with Star Citizen right now is we don't have any of that depth. We have no depth. If you took a rock and you saw, ooh, Star Citizen Ocean, you took that rock and you threw it in, rather than skipping, the rock just goes blunk, and the little top of the rock sticks out because
Because
we're not even an inch deep. There's a severe lack of depth in the game, and right now the thing that's hurting the most, because there's not much depth, is it's hurting the bigger and larger ships because they don't have a place in the world yet, and we're not even touching the larger ships. I mean, think about the Idris, right? The Idris was a Corvette, and it got bumped up to improve the hangar size, so it went from like 3 or 2.5 to
yeah,
4 basically, and can it be destroyed by the fighters it carries? If they're all Super Hornets, you better believe your ass that they'll probably be destroyed by the fighters it carries. And it's not a Corvette anymore. The thing's a frigate. It's almost a ship of the line now at this point, as far as old terminology.
yeah.
And so and and then you have ships even bigger than that. If you have the destroyers, there's only one
Or the
destroyer in the
Bengal
game, the
carrier, you know.
Javelin. Well, there's a lot of ships that aren't in the game, to really kind of compare these two. So I'm going with
Mm-hmm.
like the next larger ship, which is in the game, which is the Javelin.
Mm.
It's a destroyer, and I'm assuming that's bigger than the frigate, judging by how the pricing is and all that. But it's got to be comparable in some way.
Yeah.
But is that going to be another thing where you just get a bunch of Super Hornets and you just blow it up? I mean, if you want to compare dollar amounts, if you had, let's say you had 5 Super Hornets, well, how much is a Super Hornet? It was like 150, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
And then you times that by 5. I'm not going to do that in my head because it's a little bit too many numbers. That can destroy a $5,000 ship. That was what the I forget the name of the ship already. The
Yeah.
destroyer was.
Well,
That's
and
not acceptable.
right, and like what you're talking about when we're doing the IL-2 thing, it's like while my plane didn't have good acceleration as a Russian plane, didn't have good power, it didn't have the ability to maintain a turn because it was a Russian fighter, a turn fighter. If I had come in with a Fokker Wolf, that would have been a completely different story. I would have just done a power climb, dove right on you, and it would have
Oh
been
yeah.
I mean, but
It
that's
would have
that.
been, it would have been really, really hard to do the same maneuvers
Right.
with that, or at least stay alive, rather.
Hmm.
I'd still have some
But
options available to me, but I'd have remarkably few, just because of the nature of how certain ships combat between each other.
right, and that's
Or
exactly the point I'm
planes.
making. Is that the dynamic I mentioned there is the difference between while some fighters can be countered by larger vehicles. There are those that come at it a different way that hits the weakness of the one there. So right now, with everything kind of flying the same, you don't have that dynamic. You don't have that. Give example, the Vanguard, when it was first talked about, was supposed to be slower than a Gladius, faster than a Hornet. And right now it's not. It's supposed to be a boom and zoom long range fighter. It wasn't supposed to be a turn fighter. But it barely has the boom because it took off two guns that were supposed to be underneath the engines. They showed originally in the drop pods that came out. They would drop out from underneath. The missiles are a lot less than what they had on the thing. Basically, they're strapped to the outside and the underside, and instead of being internalized at the top. And it's slower. It's slower than a Hornet. So basically, it's got no boom or very little boom and no zoom. So what role does that actually hold? And to me, you design ships to have a purpose, and that purpose affects the strategies that you use with them. The same thing goes with large ships. The difference between like the way that while a Connie and a Redeemer might have similar firepower, the nature of the Redeemer being much smaller, or yeah, I can say it's much smaller than the
Yeah,
Connie.
it's about probably half the size in its
Yeah,
length. It
means
might be
that
a
it's
little bit wider, though.
yeah, which means it should probably be a more maneuverable craft, especially with those engines, the way that they're made, and things like that. So they would handle differently, and if you had a fighter, you would approach each one of those differently. The Connie has turrets that have probably greater coverage
Probably
than
like 310 degrees of coverage or something
right,
like that. Because
and the Redeemer
engines.
doesn't. So once again, you're talking about different tactics to approach, but to do that, you need to make sure that combat isn't basically two ships facing each other constantly and using little movements to try to dodge incoming fire. When you have 95% time face to face shooting at each other, that's called a shooter. Most flight games, you're going to be spending about 90% of your time maneuvering, and then the rest of the time, once you get into a position, and then you're going to spend the rest of that time achieving a firing solution. So probably like another 5% of the time micro like adjusting, and another 5% of the time firing. So about 5% of the time shooting, and the rest of the time trying to get to that optimal position. The way we have it right now is the exact opposite. So CIG needs to take a severe look at that because, as I said, large ships are pretty much doing the same thing. I take a Connie out sometimes. I take out my Freelancer. Vanguard. I've taken out everything. I've taken out pretty much, with the exception of maybe turning a little faster or turning a little slower. They pretty much have the same feel to them. I haven't felt anything that says, "Man, this is so different than such and such." Every one of them pretty much applies the same tactics, and that's where we need to really define these roles. It's just so important. I can't even begin to describe how important it is, because
And that's not even touching some of the non-combat ships, like the Orion mining ship and
right,
the salvaging ship, which reclaimer salvaging.
that I own
And
too.
yeah, and so if we can't balance the combat ships, what's the point of going to be flying a quote-unquote civilian vessel? Is it going to be worth my time to take out the Orion and go to this asteroid belt and spend all this time maneuvering gently between these asteroids and then, pull the big lever and start, the super mega laser drill, or before like two fighters come and blow me up? I mean, that's an expensive and very large ship. I can't imagine the time it would take to replace it.
Yeah.
Because, these ships, we're going to have a life system. So, you have like you have three Marios, and then, oh, well, now you're dead. You have to make a new Mario. Now you're playing Luigi. Well, no one wants to play Luigi. We want to play Mario, right? No, I'm just kidding here. But we're going to have a life system, and we're also going to have the insurance. I mean, if your ship gets blown up, maybe it's an Aurora. They have lots of Auroras in stock, so it's pretty much like, in a couple hours or whatever, you get your Aurora. But like if you get your Retaliator blown up, well, that's a combat ship. I mean, what are the odds of them being, stacked 10 deep in military shipyards? Probably not that good. So the bigger your ship gets, the longer time between replacing it, because we're kind of having this semi-realistic nature. So what happens if your Idris gets blown up by 6 fighters? Those fighters can get replaced, in an hour.
Minutes, yeah, or
Yeah,
hour.
minutes, hour. And then your Idris, it might be a week before you get an Idris back. Who knows? And we have to address these things before it comes down to that. Before it's like, holy shit, we have fucked up, guys. And I'm using strong language here because
Yeah,
I
go
mean
for it.
it's gonna be fucked up if they can't see this and go, oh damn, we need to bring some things in line. Fighters do too much damage. The strafing is just out of control. We should only have like 5 to 10% of your thrusters being left and right, and the way shields and armor take damage are just they're not good enough. These things have to be addressed now in the alpha stage, because that's what the alpha stage is. When you're looking at a beta of a game, usually it's feature locked. We're not adding anything new. A beta test is usually bug fixing, and bug fixing. And so we can't be trying to balance how, fighters fly, or how damaged things do, or how much, your armor and shields can take before going down in beta. Because beta is supposed to be, fixing the game, making sure it runs smooth, doing little
Right.
small tweaks here and there. And we're supposed to have Squadron 42 this year. I mean, maybe they'll push it back to January, but I don't really think so. And so we got what? It's the third month of the year,
Yeah.
right? We got, so there's 9 months left for them to fix all these things. And if they put their heads down, I think they could do it. But there's so much other things going on, because there's the storyline being developed, there's live action be going on, there's persistent universe testing and stuff going on. They've got like 20 cookie jars, and there's only 3 people with their hands trying to reach in, and there's too many cookies.
Well, there's one thing that's also very important to consider. In MMOs, most people, 80 to 90% of people, don't participate in PvP. So you cannot build a game around PvP. That is your smallest target audience. So when you have people that play it all the time and they do really well with it, and that's fine, they are still your smallest target audience. This game is a throwback to Wing Commander and games of that type. That's the way it was pitched.
Freelancer, kind of.
No.
Kind of.
Yeah, well,
Kind
Freelancer,
of.
yeah, the mechanics, like the trading and stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the thing is that this is a game that when you look at your whales, the people like myself who have thrown a lot of money into this game, the thing is that PvP, it's nice that it's there, but I'll be moving my slider all the way to PvE. I'd rather play with people than against them. That's my attitude. When I was younger, I was all about the pew-pew. I was all about getting into people's faces. And I've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. For me, now it's about creating organizations and ties and things like that, and bringing it all together and working with people. And so if you don't, and this generation that played Wing Commander and whatnot, they're a little bit older now, and a lot of them that may have started playing Wing Commander in their 30s. I was in high school, but in early college. But some of them, might be in their 50s now, and you can't forget them, because some of them have probably put tens of thousands of dollars into the game, and if you forget them, that's going to be, well, let's just say there's going to be problems. So we have to put this all together. We have to make sure the flight model is consistent, meaning that it follows the same rules. Things can fly differently, and by the nature of how they're built, but they need to follow the same rules, and they need to work together. And other than that, I mean, there's really not much I can say at this moment without just pulling it out of my ass. But anything else you can think about, Lightning?
There's one thing I could touch on. I'm sure we've talked about this before. Maybe I don't know if we've done it on any of the little podcasts or blastcasts we've been doing. But you look at how many people post on the forums, and how many people there actually are that are backers. I mean, like if there's 1 million backers, like 10,000 of them post on the forums. So the people that are posting on the forums, out of those 10,000, maybe like 1 or 2% are crazy gung ho. PvP should be the only thing you're doing. So you're looking at like 0.05% or something of the actual
It's tiny.
people. Yeah, there's just a tiny, minute.
It's a remnant of a
fraction.
remnant, and you got a remnant of a remnant within there fighting about how the game should either be an arcade or be a sim or sim light.
And it was never pitched as an arcade game.
No.
And most people don't want the arcade game,
But
especially
a lot of people haven't played it yet, or they're waiting for it to
Or
go
they
into a beta
can't.
stage, or they're waiting to get a new computer to wait for the game to hit a certain point, and they'll go out and buy a new PC. I think that you're going to see a lot more vocal people come out once they actually hit that point. And I might be wrong. I know I'm not perfect. I make mistakes like anyone else, but I can't see a lot of your whales coming out and saying, "Hey, dude, I bought the $15,000 package. How come all my ships suck? All my
Yeah.
big ships are pointless. What's the deal here?" And you got the situation like we're in Europe. If you pitch a product and you sell a product, and basically it's not
If
doesn't
if
come out the
you
way you're
Yeah.
supposed to get your money back. It's a protection on there. And by the way, just a quick interjection at the end of this blastcast. If you've been hearing dogs during this, I do apologize. It's the dogs my neighbor says don't actually ever bark. They only never bark 8 to 10 hours a day. So I do apologize. So anyway, guys,
This
I
has
hope
probably
that
been a little bit long,
a
but
little bit long, but you know what? Sometimes you just got to say what you got to say. And, once again, always feel free to leave comments down below. It's probably a heated topic, and, I don't expect everyone to agree with me on it. And, I expect probably to get some, "You suck," on the comments, but that's fine. That's fine. It's, I've been playing flight games since Atari 2600. I'm not new to this game, and I'm very set in my ways when it comes to perceptions of things when it comes to flight models and flight games. But anyway, if you have any comments, leave them down below. Like, comment, subscribe, and my name's Jairus. This is, of course, Lightning Dragon, as always, with me on my BlastCast. We will see you next week, all things considered, my new work schedule, how it comes together. But anyway, guys, have a good night. Thanks for listening.
bye bye.